Welcome to another episode of By Design Advisors, where we believe business should be run by design and not left to chance. Today, we've got a full house, 4 guests today, and I'm excited to talk to each and every one of them. We have 2 gentlemen from Ideal HR, Steve Ivester, who's the CEO and founder, and Chris McCord, who's the VP of Business Development. Welcome, gentlemen.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And also, as always, have my partner, Marty Osborne, riding shotgun with me.
Yeah, they had to kind of squeeze me in over here.
I know,
like,
it's a tight fit today.
Yeah.
Well, again, mention that you guys are with Ideal HR, a little bit about Ideal HR, 28 years in business, headquartered here in Greenville, but offer HR payroll compliance services across the nation, correct?
Correct.
Great. Well, good. We're glad to have you here. Today, we're going to really want to focus on a few different areas: people strategy, process clarity, the role a PEO can have in driving value into an organization. I'm a big fan of PEOs, always have been. I think everyone really needs one. But we'll get into some of the reasons maybe why people are scared or fearful of doing that. But let's just start. Maybe we just want to clarify, because I know PEO, we all are very familiar with that term, but some people out there, they hear PEO and have no idea what it is or how it's different from any of the other offerings out there. Do you guys just want to kind of explain a little bit about what a PEO is and what makes you guys different?
You know, I don't usually sell it as a PEO because a lot of people, particularly in South Carolina, don't know what it means.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's different in other states. Like Florida, they're on every corner. South Carolina, they're not. So I get into the things that a PEO does, and then if that catches their attention, then, you know, we can go into it. But I usually don't mention it.
Yeah.
People don't know.
And there's a lot of various configurations out there too. You have the national players, and so some of them are inflexible, others are more flexible and more conducive to the smaller businesses. And so, and people have had bad experiences, and I tell people all the time, from an ownership standpoint, the only thing you have going for you is experiences. So if you've had a bad experience, you're less likely to be open to a discussion about that. And so it's a lot of just educating and understanding what they're trying to accomplish.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think one of the things about, and I didn't know what a PEO is when we started our company, but the one thing I knew was I didn't want to do payroll. Like, I'm still amazed at how many companies think they want to own, whether it's through ADP or whatever. But to me, it's sort of one-stop shopping for payroll, benefits, and everything people-related. And to me, as a business owner, I was in the software business. I wanted to focus 100% on that, not worry about this. And it was the best thing that we ever did as a company.
But Marty, you know, the other thing is the liability, and people don't, particularly the larger ones, they don't talk about it. They have it, but I sell it. You know, people, who else will come to you and say, well, I want to share this responsibility with you. Nobody does that, you know. So it's a big deal for us.
And I think we talked about it too, was one of the reasons we ended up looking at the PEO was we got to the end of the year and our, what was it? Not disability, but our unemployment. Unemployment insurance came back, and our insurance agent was like, "Oh, your insurance is no longer 10; it's like 25,000." And we're like, "Why?" And they just said, "Well, the rates are gone up or something." I can't even remember why, but there was like 5 of us, so we didn't have any power to negotiate or whatever. Once you go into that PEO, you're part of this bigger organization, and that crap gets cut out.
Yeah.
And what I like about Ideal HR is you guys are very people focused, which by design is the same way. We say in almost every episode, we believe you win with your people, and your people are your competitive advantage. So talk a little bit about why you guys believe that as well, and kind of what you do to maximize people.
I equate it to kind of what you were saying earlier, is the difference between a vendor relationship and a strategic relationship. Vendors are just providing a platform or a service, whatever, and that's it. And you have to manage it as a business owner. A strategic relationship, we're partnered together. We're looking out for your best interest, and not just about HR. We're wanting you to grow as well. And so that's the big advantage of having that relationship, is you want somebody who's a cheerleader for you and looking out for other ways to help you grow your business. I mean, think about it. If you're a business owner, you only have so much time in a day. If you have a partnership where somebody's helping you grow making extra connections, it makes a big difference.
Mm-hmm. And you guys have worked with all kind of companies, I'm sure. What are maybe some of the biggest blind spots you see in organizations when it comes to their people and people strategy?
I'd say they don't have a people strategy. That's probably the biggest blind spot is you have owners that are, it's just by chance. And they start off, they have a certain skill set and they're good at being an entrepreneur, but it's a big change when you now are an employer. And it's just not something to think about. And so, again, why would you want to focus your energy on that? It's the distractions, the noise that prevents growth.
Marty, what are owners terrible at?
Hiring. God, we're terrible at it. Well, we believe our gut. We're busy people, and we don't want to spend the time or the effort to really do things right. And I think, again, it kind of goes back to payroll is we just think it's this payroll thing that gets done. You hire an accountant or a payroll clerk and you do it, but it's so much more. I don't know, Steve, talk about that.
Well, owners are really good at what they know, and they learn and they make money. But when they hire their first employee, they're in a different business, and they don't realize it. They didn't teach you that in school, that you've got to follow all these rules. And you need to somehow be a mentor, a coach, and love your people. I went to a class and it said, if you cannot write one page of information about every employee, you're not a good manager. And so, that's a challenge. Mm-hmm. So it encourages you to go and talk with your employees.
Yeah, it's good too, because one of the challenges I see in organizations, I grew up in the automotive industry, is you have one leader who has 100 employees. There's no way you're going to be able to write one page on each one of those employees. So it almost helps you optimize your team structure too, because once you can't do it, it's probably time to split the team or move some responsibilities.
Your supervisor should be able to. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Hiring. I'm sure you guys do a lot of that too. Let's get into that a little bit again, because that's where it all starts, right? If you don't have a good hiring process, what do you guys see out there in your experience with hiring processes, and maybe explain a little bit about what you think's the ideal hiring process?
I'll take that one. That one's interesting because it's all aspects of hiring. A lot of times it's just the preparation. How do you know what to charge? How do you know that the job description is right? I worked with a couple of companies in the past, and they were in the same industry, but two completely different owned companies. And what I found is that they had a lot of churn with one of the companies. And the problem was that their pay scale was half of what the other companies were. And I learned the equation is, do you want to hire the best of the worst or the best of the best? And if you don't understand that and do that background, how do you know? I mean, you're just like, oh, all these candidates are terrible. Well, that's because your comp plan is horrible and you're not getting good candidates. So the preparation is so helpful in understanding that, but who has time? That's another advantage of the PEOs is pay structure, comparisons, making sure the job descriptions, all that work needs to happen before you even start posting a job. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times, again, you post it, you have somebody coming in and you just want to hire them and be done with it. And so if you're not prepared, then get ready for the results of that.
Yeah, to me, it's reactive hiring versus value-driven hiring, right? When you have a plan, when you take the time up front to define that. And I love to ask companies, if a superstar employee is choosing between you and your two top competitors, why are they choosing you? Right. And it's amazing how many people don't have a great answer. Well, why would they not? We're awesome. You get some version of that. Right. You're like, oh, you think you're awesome, but is that person going to think you're awesome?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. One thing you guys might want to talk to again is back to that point is when you're in the company benefit, like people assume they're going to make a salary, they're going to get paid, you can handle taxes, like that's almost become sort of the no-brainer stuff. But what's really changing in today's marketplace is benefits and packages and what we owe, what the employees should pay. You want to talk a little bit about that, because my guess is that's on everybody's mind.
It is. Well, first of all, I want to go back to Chris just a minute. We use TTI. It's an assessment. So you can know who's coming in the door. We do that with every employee. We don't use it as the deciding factor or the sole factor, because you want to interview. You want to get to know that person. And then after that interview, we always have them take an assessment. And then we can look and see what their personality is, and you get to know that person a little bit more. And that way, when they come back in, now you got some questions you can ask them. You know, that you didn't know, you wouldn't know to ask. So I know we were hiring a nurse, and she said, you know, we just asked the question, do you have management experience? And she said, yeah, I do. Well, at the end of the day, she did her assessment, she came back, and that was her worst skill. And we thought, wow, we just thought she was great. And so what happened is it gave us some questions to ask her to get needle down into it. We learned that she'd only started like a month ago, but she enjoyed doing it. So that's a skill we could teach her, and she ended up being a great hire.
Yeah.
So
yeah, she just answered the question right. You just said, do you have management experience? You didn't say, do you have good management?
exactly.
Have you done it for a while? Can you tell me
How long have you been doing it?
Have you gotten good
So
results?
We
with
learned. We got
management
taught.
experience?
Yes.
I'm glad you mentioned assessments, because we're by design. Again, we're always, don't leave your team to chance. We have our we prefer DISC and Working Genius, but we always say use something. Like, right, get that data out there, get to know these people. It's too hard. There's too much prep. There's too much online. People know how to answer your questions. Everyone has an interview strategy. You're not going to really ask them a question that catches them off guard anymore. So to me, these assessments just become even more valuable in this super information world, because it gets past the BS. It gets down to what motivates you, what crushes you, what do you enjoy, what do you don't enjoy, and you can really start to do better job fitting that way.
Right. And getting back to what you were talking about as far as the full package, is that there's a lot of options out there. Oftentimes what I find is that business owners don't know half of the options to support employees.
Right.
And it also is industry specific. So it's not a one size fits all. You really have to understand what are your competitors offering, and you want to be competitive. It goes into not just pricing, job description, pay analysis, and all that. It is benefits too, but you want to assess that and then understanding it. So a lot of times it goes back to the educational aspect of it. Is everybody thinks that the only option is brokered benefits.
Right.
Well, there's a wide range of different types of benefits that brokers can offer now that a lot of business owners don't know about, and especially smaller businesses, they don't have the buying power. And so when you look at traditional brokered benefits, it gets real expensive. So a lot of times they just drop it and they say, I'm just not going to offer it, and I'll just pay a stipend or something like that. So a lot of what I find I'm doing is educating owners on what is available out there. That's probably what I spend most time doing.
Back to that point, and the funny part is, since I left Accenture, my Cobra just ended. So I had to go into the marketplace. I have no idea what I'm doing. None. But I'm talking to everybody how easy it is. And so I'm going into the marketplace and figured out what Blue Cross Blue Shield, and I'm looking at stuff that I never knew was going on, or how it goes on, or how income affected rates and that kind of stuff. And it was kind of eye-opening to me. I kind of blame Dale. I don't think you ever really educated me. I don't know.
I protected you from that. That was my role.
Versus education.
Exactly.
No.
I needed you selling and growing the business.
What you
took care
guys
of that
need
stuff.
is a good PEO.
Yes.
And you wouldn't have to do that. We'd do it.
Correct.
We'd help you with
That
it.
would assume that we're actually paying ourselves. But, no.
Yeah, there you go.
That does help.
But I will say, at Voco, I was the full-time HR person. We had a 2-people HR department, and we still utilized a PEO for that stuff, because benefits can get overwhelming quick. Blue Cross Blue Shield, UHC. I mean, there's a gazillion, and then within each one, there's a gazillion options, and it's just
multi-state, and
it is nice to have some experts help walk you through the differences. And hey, here's maybe what we'd recommend. And it is hard because you get overwhelmed, and then you just say, "I'll do it later." And guess what happens when business owners say, "We'll do it later."
But Marty, we always tell people we help employers have a healthy relationship with their employees.
Yeah.
And the way you do that is handbook and benefits and having a resource for them to call in and learn about their benefits and, doing all those things that an HR department would do just to make it easy for the employer.
Yeah, I mean,
so just call Ideal.
Yeah, which I think is awesome because, again, creating a handbook and doing everything you just said doesn't create any business for me or drives any revenue. So why am I wasting my time, or why am I spending any time on it when I could get you guys to do it?
Right, because your biggest asset are your employees, and you got to take care of them.
And you got to take care of them.
Can you say that again, Steve?
Yeah.
We're firm believers.
Your biggest asset is Dale.
There we go. There we go. So as you guys, again, it's people. I think we're kind of hinting around. Culture's the big buzzword, right?
Yep.
It's everywhere. It's everything. You guys have seen a lot of different industries. Maybe what do you guys see that separates a good culture from like those super great cultures that everybody's shooting for?
It's managers. Managers get promoted because they did something good. Doesn't mean they're good with people or their employees or their friends that are working for them. So our toughest client are the ones where the managers are not trained. So first thing we do is we go in and we tell the owner, your manager can call us anytime they want, and we'll help them. And that really helps a company more than anything.
Yeah. In my experience, producers get promoted, right? It's whoever's doing the best. It's to your point. But once you get promoted, it's a completely different skill set. But we just always promote the doers. And then eventually it's what is the Peter principle or whatever. You always get promoted one step too high, and then you start struggling because there's no investment in, hey, they've got these skills down, but we got to teach them all the emotional intelligence stuff, all how to have difficult conversations, how to give feedback, how to do one-on-ones. They've never done it. They've just been able to produce whatever they were instructed to produce.
Right. Well, and that's funny because you're talking about culture. When you take a producer and they're happy because they're producing, you hurt both them and the business by promoting them in those situations because now you just took your best performer. He's not producing, so revenues drop. He's unhappy. There's a very good chance he's going to leave, but what happens is that negatively affects culture because now that manager doesn't like to do that. The disc profile may have that. That's what he doesn't like to do at all. So now he's miserable. And when a manager leaves, oftentimes a new manager comes in and they want their own people. So then it disrupts the whole entire team. So that's the biggest thing is that why, really focusing on the managers really before they go in. And that's going back to the strategy is if we have a good relationship, we want the owner saying, hey, we're at a point where we need a manager. Can you help make sure we're putting the right person in that management position? We can help once that person's already there. But if that person is not a good manager and just not wired, that's a big mistake. It's only so much you can do.
Yeah.
You're better off really having that strategy conversation ahead of time because that affects culture directly. And it can have a big impact down the road as well too.
Yeah, I mean, we always say that the number one reason usually a manager fails is lack of self-awareness, and a lot of times what happens is back to who we promote. What we get into is what got you here is not going to get you there, and so people get stuck because they got promoted by having their hands on the keyboard or being the person who got everything done or working. Well, being a leader is a different skill set. It's not about what I do, but it's what we do.
Correct.
And that transition doesn't go well.
Yep. I see it all the time, and I've seen it in many businesses before where that affects it. And going back, like the larger corporations, the larger you get, it's easy when you've got a 5-person company. Culture is the 5 of you.
Yeah.
But when you start getting where you can't fill out the page on the employee, then culture becomes much more difficult to maintain. And then it gets out of control. It's like a runaway train.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, what happened to culture? And it's because you're out of touch with the employees.
Yeah, and I think the other mistake companies make when it comes to promotion and some of this stuff, everyone has values, right? They're on the wall, they're on the website, they're, you know, everybody loves to tout their values. And I've always said, your values are what you promote. So, you know, we may have, we want respect and we want all this stuff as our core values, but then the people that are get promoted are backstabbing or political, and so everyone's just looking at you going, well, these values don't mean anything, right? So I always try to tell people, like, when you're promoting, you better be promoting on your values. It better not just be because, well, he knocked the sales number out of, but he knocked the sales number, but nobody likes working with him. He's a jerk, blah, blah, blah. But that's who you're going to promote. Well, then you've just destroyed your culture.
True.
And it's going to be.
Which is why don't they put that on the wall?
They should. I've always said,
like,
if money's just put it on there. What do we value? Making money.
We
which
value
is fine.
money. We value sales.
Right.
We don't value relationships.
Mm-hmm.
We value sales. And when you do, like, just put it on the board. Like, why do we hide?
You get
You're up front.
you get the culture you allow.
Yeah.
So if you allow that person to mess everything up, you own it.
Yep.
You're right.
It's your fault. Like
Yeah.
that. The one thing as a leader, when people sometimes look at their business, and we've had owners come to us and go, I don't even like going in my own business. And we're like, well, that's your fault. Like, you created this mess. You created this toxic environment, and there are ways to clean it up. But if you just, and again, we say it all the time, when you leave everything to chance and not be intentional or do things by design, most likely that's what's going to happen. You're going to get culture by design, or you're going to get culture by chance.
By chance. And I think that's the toughest employee to deal with as an organization, is that toxic performer. Because they're producing, right? And it's off. I can't lose them. I can't. We had one or two in our Voco days. We just think, I can't do without them. They're producing. They're the best we've got. And you start justifying it, but it never fails, at least in my experience. When those folks leave, whether by their own choice or through ours, everything gets better. Every company survives. People step up. Everything becomes much better. But it's a tough decision to make, to get rid of that toxic producer.
True.
A lot of times you hear about exit interviews. It's exit interviews with the employees that are still there can be just as beneficial. And then you find out, oh man, that was the best thing with that person leaving, because now everybody's happier and culture. And so you learn from that. Everybody focuses on just interviewing the person leaving, but a lot of times that's how you find that out. And that's a good point.
I always think sometimes running a business is like having children. We think things aren't going on, or they don't know stuff, and they all know it, right? We think we're protecting the team and everybody, and then when we make that move, everybody's coming and go, God, thank goodness we didn't think you saw what was going on.
Yeah, I was thinking about quitting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So as we're talking about culture, and I know Ideal offers, some organizational development and all of that services as well. Maybe what's one thing that an owner listening to this could do in the next quarter as far as it comes to their people strategy, culture strategy? Is there anything you would recommend? Hey, if I was going to do anything over the next quarter as a business owner to kind of either take a pulse or improve it, what would you guys recommend?
Great question. I'll tell you, the first thing I tell people is to take the owner and go educate him. He needs a coach, because that's where you start, and then you begin to learn, and then you pass that on down to your next person in line, and then they are responsible for passing it down to their managers and the people that work with them. So yes, you got to start there.
Okay.
Yeah, think about culture. Where does it start? It's got to be top down. It's got to, you have to understand, as an owner, you've got to want to improve yourself before you ask everybody else to improve themselves. And so if you can, a coach or do a disc profile, do something to better understand yourself and how you relate. And it never hurts to ask your managers, is there anything I can improve in how I'm communicating with you? Doing something is better than not doing anything at all.
Yeah.
One of the things that we do that we are different is that we said TTI. It's Target Training International. And so we will do, once we know everybody's profiles, like we're having one this Friday. Actually, we're getting all the employees together. We're putting different personalities together and doing certain events with them and see how they react. One time we did painting and we put an accounting person with an HR person. And every time this HR person would strike something or you could only put one line at a time. So it'd take them an hour to get a picture. And every time this HR person would put something down, this person in accounting would scratch it out, and it was amazing, this painting that we ended up with. It was one of the best ones out of the group.
Really?
It was a lot of fun.
So what is that exercise? You tell them to paint something, or they just each one does a line and then they figure out where they want to go?
I'm going to say something, you'll probably scratch this, but that's an artist term is called sissy bitch. I'm sorry, but that's what it's called. And you put different personalities together.
And they have to, but they don't know where they're going. They just start and then.
You come up, like we had one guy, he was a Darth Vader guy. You could see he was drawing Darth Vader. But the other guy didn't have that. He wanted a car. So the car was going through Darth Vader.
Gosh,
it was interesting.
Do that. This sounds fun.
But you need somebody to coach you through that. Yeah. And I can give you an artist name that would help you.
Yeah, definitely. That sounds like you had again, going back to the disc a little bit, you probably had a high C with a high I. The I wanted just a free form and do whatever. And the C was like, no, that's not where the line goes.
That's right. Yeah. Pace personality.
Across the line.
That's right.
Which is why, why I'm such a big fan of, you have to assess your people. You have to know yourself. You have to know your team just because of that. Because there's no right or wrong. Like you said, they ended up getting one of the best pictures, but I bet you they were both frustrated during the process.
They were.
Because they didn't understand each other. But once we understand each other and realize those two people probably needed each other because they filled the gaps and like they created something better than either one of them would have done individually.
That's exactly right. The worst company you could get is to be everybody like Marty or me or I put me in there, Marty, or all pace personalities. You can't. But people don't know that until they go and learn who they have employed.
No, I think we really find out the people that probably irritate us or that we bump heads the most are the people that we need. It's the people that challenge us. It's the people that fill in the gaps that we have. And so, the more we do that, and that's when I do believe where culture starts to come. But, I'll go back to what you said, Chris, because it starts at the top. And a lot of owners and a lot of leaders think it doesn't. They think it's the parties we have and, all the events and look at all that stuff. But I even said when I was working for a large software company, they would do events. The CEO or the president would show up for like 10 minutes and leave. And all he said was, there's a more important place to be than my people.
Right.
But they think, I'm busy. I have to appear, authoritative. And all you look like was a jerk. And then you'd say, look at this great party I threw. Look at the culture. And everybody the culture is dysfunctional, that they're railing against you. So I think it always does go back to the top.
Correct.
It goes back to the strategy as well, too, is that if you have good culture, the events, those are good because they have purpose and everything. But if it's the messaging and the perceived messaging, but it's funny, in HR, there's diversity. The term, we use it, but in leadership and in businesses, diversity is exactly that. You need the different disc profiles within a company because you're going to come at it from different perspectives. It's a lot of what I run across with mentoring. That's why I love the team mentoring approach, because each person is coming at it from a different perspective, but collectively you're giving a business owner 3 different perspectives or 2 different perspectives on ideas. They can ignore all of them, but at least you're getting the different perspectives. Everybody is wired differently, and if you don't have diversity as a part of leadership, you're not going to be successful. I mean, it's been proven over and over again. You don't want a yes person all the time. That doesn't help you grow as an owner.
If they say yes, then they're not challenging me. Then I don't have to think differently, and I can live in my comfort zone. And how does that work out?
It's easier doing that, but it's not a good recipe for success.
So I've got a question for you. Working your background through PEOs, you work for some national organizations, now working with Steve in a local. How do you compare and contrast them? If somebody's analyzing sort of more local versus national, what are some of the things people should look at or understand the differences or benefits?
There's pros and cons to both. It's just like anything. When you look at the national companies are less flexible. So this is what we have to offer. You go in and they have master plans, which sounds great, and sometimes it is, but you have to be comfortable going with that particular provider that they provide. It's not multiples. Whereas with brokers, they have flexibility depending on the industry, the company, what's going on. So there's more flexibility there. And a lot of times it goes into when you're smaller, you need that flexibility and you need that support. That's what intrigued me with the local boutique approach, is the flexibility and being able to help a wider range of companies. And the reason a lot of times people are hesitant with going with PEOs is they think it's too expensive.
Right.
But they're looking at maybe an individual component and not looking at the whole and everything that goes involved with that. And the time relief, the offsetting the risk. A lot of times people don't understand the cost of offsetting risk is a big thing too. Like we were talking about it earlier. The gotchas are, when you get a bill that you haven't been managing and you're trying to figure out, wait a minute, is this because of our company or is this because I don't know what I'm looking at? So that's the biggest component of it, is the flexibility, and it's got to be affordable.
Yeah. I mean, is that the number one reason people wouldn't do it? They think it's cost?
Yeah. When you say HR, well, everybody has a different definition of HR, but they don't know what that means. And so until we can give them some guidelines on how much it's going to cost, because in many cases, like a small company, it's so inexpensive.
Yeah.
And it's, and because there's competition, we have certain prices. A bigger company is going to be a lot more than a smaller company. And it's odd that our services actually, we give you more personal touch than a large company.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing, I always think it's the fractional side, right? It's that you bring all of these expertise, and if I were to hire those expertise, I would have to pay a lot of money to one person, or B is I have to have multiple people. And again, it just feels like when you do the ROI, you have to look at the all-in cost, not just...
Correct. And then if you hire one person, you're going to get one person's ability to do all the different benefits that we offer, like a benefits department, a payroll department, the time and attendance. Once you hire somebody, you still have to put all those things together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you just hit on like something I just jumped at is we always bring our own bias, right? So when I hire somebody, they're going to bring their bias or they're going to bring their experience, which says this is what we did. Where if we bring Ideal HR, we'll bring 50, 60, 100 company ideas and let you pick. So, one of the things that hiring somebody is that you don't really get the best solutions, you get their solution.
And that's why I've always said, I think the best, this is just my opinion, the best setup is there is someone on the team is the PEO. I mean, that's usually HR, but if you don't have HR, the PEO, and it doesn't have to be an either or. I think it works best when it's a combination and a partnership for that reason, right? You get all of the different departments and the expertise and all of that, but you also have somebody in-house that knows you guys get to know their business, but you're not on site every day, living it. Yes, you'll know their business, you'll know their people, you get as involved as I'm sure they'll let you get involved. But that's why I always think it's best if there's somebody on the team that is the PEO, whatever you want to call it, partner, and they kind of manage everything. And then it's one. And again, we're keeping it off the business owners, we're keeping it off the sales reps, so they can go and grow and drive revenue and do their thing. But we can also make sure our people are taken care of and we're doing right by them.
Well, Dale, actually, you don't get me every day, but you can get me just about every time.
Yeah.
So,
That's nice. So talk about, and again, this is probably a question everybody has, is when's the right time to engage you guys? If I'm, let's say, on ADP or I'm doing my own thing, if I'm thinking about changing, what would a process look like, or what are your recommendations?
I could answer that. It depends on the size. Normally you're looking at, I don't know, anywhere from 2 weeks to 10 weeks, whether it's a 5-man group or, a 100-person company. Do they need time clocks? It just, and we make it easy. There are some companies that make it really hard to transition. We take all the employee information, we load it in our system, from benefits to time and attendance to training those people that are going to be using those, like who's reporting payroll and how do I set up my accrual system. Mm-hmm. We do all that in-house. So it depends. I'm not an attorney who would answer, well, it depends.
Well, then if it's not, then you can give me an answer.
That's right. But it
doesn't sound like it's a big deal. Like people make a bigger deal of switching than it is.
No, some people make it hard. Some people don't. And then there are certain times during the year that it makes more sense. So you don't have to wait till January the 1st.
Right. So now is really a good time to start investigating. Is if you were looking at switching the beginning of the year, now would be a great time, correct?
It is.
Yeah, typically when people are looking at benefits, they don't want to do a mid-year change necessarily because of some resets, and there's areas there. One of the things that's nice is that you don't want to have too many changes going on. So we tell people all the time, if you're renewing in January, which is very typical of most companies with a medical, we would rather come on board prior to that so that we can get to know you. We can set up a lot of the programs, get everything going, so that in January, the only thing you're changing is your medical plans for the employees. So you're not changing 2 or 3 things.
Right.
And so that's some of the flexibility that I talk to people all the time, is that when you look at someone like us, we're not going to ask you to change your 401k plan. We're not going to ask you to change your benefits plan.
Can I keep my doctor? Everybody wants to know.
Can I keep your doctor? And so we're just managing all that.
Yeah.
And so, but it gets into, I've had companies concerned about changing because they don't want their employees to have 2 W-2s. Well, there's ways around that, but with your national, that goes into the inflexibility. You're going to get it one way or another, how you do that. So it's really triggers as well, too.
Okay.
I mean, if they're in a bad situation, do you want to continue that bad situation another 6 months and wait until the end of the year? Or do you want to go ahead and pull off the Band-Aid and get it cleared up so people can start?
Right.
The key thing is that goes back to the strategy conversation. We're going to assess the situation and figure out what's the best case scenario, and then educate them. Here's what happens if you want to do something now, or we can wait. We're just going to educate you and let you make that decision, but giving those flexibility and sharing different options is the best thing we can do for the business owner.
Don't leave your benefits and things to chance.
There you go. There you go.
One thing I wanted to ask you guys, because you're in this industry, I've dabbled in it just from a client side. there's good and bad, right? Just like any industry, there's companies that are really good, there's companies that are really bad. What are maybe some things business owners should look for?
I thought you were going to ask who the bad ones.
No. We won't ask any names, specific names, but maybe what should business owners be looking for? And hey, these are some green flags. This is something you want to look for in a partner, and maybe here's some red flags that maybe to avoid.
It was easy for me. I always tell people, if you're trying to decide them versus us, come visit us. We'd love to introduce you to our team. You know, come in, sit with us, have a cup of coffee, and then you can decide. Because I think it's personable. Because we're doing all these things for you, and it's a partnership.
Yeah, I would agree that if it's a true strategic partnership, it's got to be based on relationship. And where's the support team? You know, the national companies, they're great, they're large, they're national, but oftentimes the support teams are anywhere remotely close to where the company's based.
Right.
And so that's one of the things that we pride ourselves on, is our support is local. And so we can support employees being anywhere across the country, but you want to be able to know that they're accessible. And goes back to is it a strategic partnership or is it just a vendor relationship?
Right.
Yeah, and that happened with us at Advoca. We had a local team, a dedicated team when we first signed up, and one was in Charlotte, one was I think in Atlanta or something. But you know, we knew who they were, we knew their faces. Well, about halfway through the contract, that changed, and for better service, we lost our dedicated team.
For better service, we got worse service.
Yeah, because everything, and then I started noticing everything became offshore or near shore, and it became, you know, we always had good, because we could pick up the phone and call them and we'd get an answer. Well, once it went to that model, good luck.
Remember, did they reduce our cost then?
No, they did not. So again, I think that is very important, right?
Yeah.
Where are the people that are helping you? Do you get a dedicated team, or do you just have to call into a call center? And because what happens is that's what happened to us. And then every time you called in, guess what I had to do? Explain who I was, what we do, what our plans were, and it just got so annoying.
They don't know you.
Yeah.
They don't know anything about the business. That's the key.
When people they say, "Well, how soon would you call me back if I called you?" And I said, "Well, if we're not calling you back in 15 or 20 minutes, we're feeling really bad that we didn't give you good service. You know, we don't have this 24-hour thing, you know, because if I can't make the call, I'm going to ask somebody else in my office to at least call you and say, Steve's going to call you back in an hour. He's in a meeting right now. He's doing a podcast. So that's how we do it. That's the way we see it.
So I got kind of an off-the-wall question for you guys. Like, what's the most interesting benefit you've seen a company offer? Anything kind of unique, or just that you thought was unique or off the wall or just different? Is there anything you can share with us?
Run across more so than I
Oh,
have. I've got one example.
Soup to nuts. I can't think. I don't consider it odd. I don't know.
I've seen where people do full benefits coverage, which can get expensive, but they'll cover the employee and the family,
Right.
full coverage, and then they adjust the salary ranges
Right.
based on that. But then they'll do profit sharing on top of that.
Right.
So a lot of it goes back to the industries and what they feel like they need to do to be competitive, but also if they're really focused on retaining and they feel like they've done a good job of getting the right employees and they want to keep them on there, then they'll do that. But it's got to be within reason going in there. And again, it doesn't matter coming from an employee. It doesn't matter what the pay is. If the culture is toxic, you're not going to stay. It doesn't
Right.
matter if
what the
you're covered
benefit is or anything unique and so on. I mean,
Exactly.
we did from day one. We believed we paid 100% employee, 50% family. That was just the rule day one. And some people could say, well, I'm single, that's costing me money. And we're like, no, it's to build the company. So we didn't think that was an added benefit to a married person, that somebody who's single would get money. We thought that was good for the company. And so if you ended up getting married, if you had a family, you would benefit. But that was one of the unique things we did at Voco, is just sort of a signature thing we did. And, it costs money, but we thought that was well worth what we were offering people.
And that goes back to, that's a part of your mindset with culture, is that it doesn't mean that somebody who's not able to afford, and maybe they're doing 80%, that they don't care about the culture. But that was a part of your focus on culture. You wanted to invite families. And so it goes back into all of that needs to be a part of the strategy as you're building your company. What do you want to do? What type of employee do you want to attract? And so that is part of the strategy discussion. It goes into the all the benefits, all the services that you're offering, at the same time still making it affordable. But you planned it at the very beginning, so it was already part of the budget planning, and so you work around that.
Yeah, it was a non-negotiable. So.
Yeah, and I think as we wrap this up today, I think the key that I keep hearing, and it comes out every time we do one of these episodes, is being intentional and developing a strategy, not reacting, not just trying to wing it. It's let's get intentional. Let's figure out what we want, where we're going, and then you can help them design a plan to get there, whether that's immediately 6 months from now, a year from now, you guys. So if people are out there listening and say, hey, I want to talk to Steve and Chris, how do they get in touch with y'all? How can they reach out to you?
You can always go to idealhr.net, and it's got the contact information, and reach out. And it's got all of our information.
I like
on
that
there.
Simple name, Ideal HR.
Yes.
Pretty simple. Yes.
And good. And we'll have that link in the bio of the episodes, and we'll have Chris and Steve's LinkedIn links there. So, yeah, reach out to them if you have any questions. I'm sure you guys will answer any questions anyone has out there on how to get that process started. So, great episode, guys. I really appreciate your time. I know you guys both are very busy guys, so we appreciate you taking about an hour to sit down with us and talk about people and culture.
Thank you so much.
Enjoyed
Enjoyed
it.
it.
Thank you.
Guys.
Thank you. Appreciate it.